Alright, so hello everybody. This is episode 10 of the More Knowledge Show, coming to you live outside in a garage in Alabama. So, yeah. Yeah, it's been a pretty interesting week in the world, pretty much. A lot has happened since I've last come out here and talk. So, the first thing I guess we can talk about is, um, there has been many different there's been an increase of violent protests all around the world. People are starting to kill each other. People are starting to attack each other. There's talks about, warfare on the streets. Pretty much, the world is slowly becoming a war zone. But before we talk about that war, let's go back to our trade war with China. And I know we talk about the trade war a little bit too much. And I think that before we talk about the trade war, let's talk about, how the trade war, it is significant, but it's talked about a lot more than it probably should be talked about. Because there are things that are going on around the world that probably have a bigger impact than the trade war does. I mean, you talk about like the European Union, the entire European Union, everything that's going on there. The impact of that could possibly be even greater than our trade war with China. Because if the European Union breaks up, which it will, and some people say it should, but I mean, regardless of whether you think it should break up or not, you can't deny the fact that if it does break up and all these countries, the Eurozone breaks up, everyone has their own currency, that's going to cause some serious problems. And chances are the process of breaking up will include a lot of extremist groups popping up. And I understand that there are some pretty good reasons for wanting to leave the European Union. But if you have something like the European Union, where all these countries have been united for so long and now they're just going to split apart, something like that could create an even greater risk than what's going on in China. Because you see, what China is actually trying to do is China's kind of trying to move in. They're moving in the direction of something like a European Union. They're trying to, their one belt, one road thing, where they're trying to expand trade across countries. So, and then America, I guess, here we see it as like a threat. The fact that China's trying to expand and create a greater market for China to sell their products to. So China is actually opening up the world, and a country like Europe is closing it off. So, what would you say is considered a greater risk? A country that's trying to open up a large part of a large part of the world to like trade, or a situation where countries are like tearing apart from each other, where there's increased hostility and increased conflicts. The main thing with China is that China's attempt to open up the world to the Chinese markets, their attempt to accomplish these huge goals, is it that attempt, it brings conflict with other countries like America, because other countries like a country like America, we're gonna kind of see that as a threat. Like China is trying to take our place. But I mean, what China is doing on its own is not super threatening compared to what you see in other places. Anyway, so I just want to say that real quick because like everyone is talking about the trade war with China, but it probably, if you look at all the huge problems in the globe, I think the trade war, it's significant, but it's not nearly as significant as is being talked about. I would say this, if something is being thrown in your face and talked about a lot, then chances are it's being put out there in your face constantly to hide you from some problem that's probably even greater, but they do not want you to fully realize how great that problem is. So the something like the trade war is pushed out there a lot because people do not want you to know about some of the other things that are going on all across the globe that would create panic if people realize the type of stuff that we're heading for. In October, the United Kingdom is going to leave the European Union probably without any sort of agreement or deal. It'll just be, they're pretty much just going to crash out of the European Union. And when you have an economy as big as the United Kingdom just crashing out of the European Union, that's going to cause a lot of disruptions for companies, for people, for supply chains. And considering how connected the global economy is, that's going to affect America. But and something like that's going to happen in October. Who knows what's going to happen with this trade war? I mean, we pretty much know that's going to happen in October. But so you would think that people would be hyping that up, because right now that seems like an even bigger risk globally, but people aren't talking about it. People are just talking about the trade war. But I mean, I'm talking about the trade war too. But anyway, I just want to say that before I talk about the trade war, because I just want to make sure that people are aware it's a lot more than the trade war, and it's things that are probably more urgent than the trade war. It's things like in Hong Kong, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So anyway, with our trade war with China, just this week we pushed back on some tariffs. The stock market was up a lot that day when we did, and then a little bit after that, I'm not sure. I keep on forgetting, on what days the stock market was up and down. It's kind of confusing. But then the stock market pretty much crashed. Well, it didn't crash. It was down a lot because the yield curve inverted. And I want to say something about that because it's kind of weird. People would just because the yield curve inverts, all of a sudden now people realize that the chance of us having a recession is so high. I mean, the economic fundamentals that cause the yield curve inversion have been in place for a long time, but the fact that people just need to see the shape of a line change a little bit, and all of a sudden now they're finally aware of the fact that we're about to enter a recession, I think just kind of crazy. But it just shows how stupid the financial markets are. And yeah, it just shows like how so many things don't really make sense, how so many things are just kind of out of place, and all of these things that are out of place eventually have to be corrected. So when you have a stock market that's completely away from reality, if you have a stock market that reacts reacts like crazy because of a yield curve inversion, when the yield curve inversion, like the conditions put in place to create the yield curve inversion have been around. But it takes just now for the market to fully realize those type of risks. But anyway, so we push back the tariffs, which I think we're basically admitting to the world that we cannot handle tariffs. And the president, he said that we're pushing back tariffs to help out with Christmas shopping. Well, if China's paying the tariffs, how is that going to affect our Christmas shopping? All of it does not really make very much sense. I'm not really too sure what this strategy is, but it's not a good one. I just think that maybe the president is trying to. He realized that the markets are panicking. Well, they're not panicking just yet. You want to know a market that is panicking? Argentina is panicking. America, we're still pretty stable compared to the rest of the world. I mean, our treasuries, they're like what, 1.5%. I mean, that's better than like what, -4%, or like, all that stuff that's going on in Europe. I mean, we're relatively stable because people still have confidence in America. But I mean, when you're a president and you're pretty much running on the fact that you have a strong economy, and the strong economy is running on the fact that you have a strong stock market, you need to do things that will allow the stock market to continue to go up. But he's been put in a really difficult situation. He's put himself in that position. But here's the thing about these tariffs that he pushed back. The fact is, we're still having those tariffs. They're pretty much just going to come at a later date, and he didn't get rid of all the tariffs. There's still a lot of tariffs that are still going to come into place on September 1st, and it still probably will affect Christmas shopping. So the fact is, the economy over the next quarter is still in a pretty bad position because of these tariffs. So all this talk about, the consumer is still in a strong position. They may be able to create that illusion for a little while by knocking the tariffs back, but the tariffs are still coming, and a lot of them, even the ones that are pushed back, will still come. They'll just come later. So the effects overall aren't going to change. It's just an illusion that you see these politicians do to spread these things out to make it seem like it's now not as bad. But so it's just another thing. The stock market was up a lot because of that, and I think that's something that the president is going to continue to try to do, to give an illusion that the trade war may not be as bad for the American economy. But the reality is that we're still going to get these tariffs because we have to follow through with these tariffs. Otherwise, we're going to look weak. And people need to wake up to that. This idea that America's just going to fall back from tariffs, that's not realistic. The tariffs are going to happen. They're going to keep on coming, and they're not going to stop. And the economy will continue to be affected by it. So I just don't want people to be tricked by this. The more they see it happen, the more they see us just push back on tariffs. People need to understand that they still exist. And the day when we completely just start slashing off tariffs, that's the day when we surrender the trade war. And I just don't see how we can surrender the trade war right now. If the president's in a tough situation, if he keeps the trade war going, he might lose the election because that's going to hurt the economy. But if he falls back on the trade war, if he doesn't continue with it, then the people who supported him because they knew that he was going to be tough with China, well, then they're probably not going to support him as much. So it's a tough situation, and a lot of the pain has already been done to the economy and to individuals. So it's kind of hard to walk back on that. And regardless of when the tariffs come in, it's still going to be a rough road from here for our country. So anyway, I just want to say that. And the next thing I want to talk. So the next thing is everything that's going on in Hong Kong. So if you've been watching the news, you see that Hong Kong, there's like a lot of protesters everywhere. They're shutting down airports. The Hong Kong economy is doing terrible because of these protests. And the protests are these pro-democracy protests because Hong Kong, they're going against the Chinese government. They feel the Chinese government is trying to expand their influence beyond what they should. What they originally agreed on. Hong Kong was supposed to be like this separate country where they have their own freedoms, but they're still technically a part of China. But now China's kind of breaking that agreement. They're kind of coming in. They're starting to censor things, and they're starting to take more control of Hong Kong. And yeah, these Hong Kong protests are not going to end good. The Chinese government, they called the Hong Kong protesters terrorists. They said that they're asking for destruction. There's already like these military things, these tanks and stuff. They're already like lined up outside the city. They're pretty much they are getting ready for war in the streets of Hong Kong. And I would say that this is pretty significant. And this can escalate anytime. It could escalate tomorrow, today. It could be escalating right now. If this does become, war on the streets of Hong Kong, where the military comes in, which I think they will have to, they're not going to let this continue going on for too much longer, these protests. If that does happen, then you will have war on the streets of the third largest financial center in the entire world. So you have New York City, you have London, and let's remember, London is going to be affected by Brexit. So that's the second biggest financial center in October is going to be affected by Brexit. And very soon, we could have the third biggest financial center pretty much like with war and tanks. And I mean, already it's being heavily affected. But if the military gets involved, that's going to cause serious problems, serious disruptions in the global financial markets. The stock market's is going to be, this may be one of the greatest risks to the stock market in the near term, because with a Brexit, you still have till October for that to take place. But in Hong Kong, if something happens, it'll probably happen before October. And people aren't really, people are, the Hong Kong stuff is in the news, but people aren't talking about how this can affect the entire globe. And I think what we're seeing in Hong Kong, which we're seeing a city like Hong Kong, pretty much in complete warfare with these protesters, a lot of like violent battles with police. I think that this is pretty much the beginning, because people aren't looking for simple reforms. Countries like Hong Kong are looking to break away. They're looking for a complete systematic change. They want to be completely separate from China. This is similar to what's going on in other countries where for example, they want to be separate from the European Union. People want to be separate. They want to break away. This isn't just we want to elect a new president. It's a lot more serious. And something like this, the things that all over the globe people are pushing for, all these ideas will lead to more violence. It's just like what we're seeing in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is just the first of a lot of these places all over the world that are going to see these protests, and a lot of people are going to start. A lot of people are going to be killed. I mean, that's just the reality. So, but here's the thing: the stuff that's going on in Hong Kong is not going to work, and it's going to be pretty much be wiped out. The Hong Kong's position as a financial center is going to be probably affected forever because of this, and it's only the beginning. Just wait till we start seeing stuff like this in New York City. Once it starts happening in America, then pretty much all bets are off. Who knows what will happen from that point if this starts to happen in America. So I'm just saying, I think in the near term, this is a big risk. It could happen at any moment. If the military gets involved in Hong Kong and the streets of Hong Kong becomes a war zone where there's tanks and people are dying and there's explosions in the third biggest financial center in the entire world, it will be bad. Like it's hard to even say how the market will react because you don't really know. I don't think anyone is really be able to predict something like that. But you can just know if certain things happen, if it's going to be good or bad, and if things in Hong Kong escalate further, which they will, over the near term, probably by next week in our More Knowledge show, it's a very good chance everything will have already come down in the city of Hong Kong. So anyway, just keep your eyes open for that, because we could be getting some more chaos extremely soon. And if you think things are chaotic right now, just wait. And to close off, let's talk about Argentina. They had an election, and the investors did not like the result of the election, so the stock market tanked near 50%. Their currency collapsed pretty much, and now the risk of them defaulting on their debt is over 50%. So if you have a country like Argentina, which already has many problems, and you just see how fast their stock market collapsed, you see how fast their currency collapsed, and how fast things deteriorated for them. And I just want to say, I think that something like what's going on in Argentina, while if Argentina collapses, it may not affect the entire world. But I just think Argentina is an example for how fast something like this could happen. You can go to bed and wake up the next day, and nearly half of your wealth is wiped out. All of your retirement savings are wiped out, which, to be honest, a lot of the stuff that you think is going to come for your retirement, it's pretty much inevitable that it's already wiped out anyway. But anyway, pretty much everything you have is wiped out. The value of your currency is gone, and then everything turns to chaos. That can happen so fast. It's not going to be a slow process where the stock market's down like 2%, and then over time it's going to slowly fall apart. It's going to be like in one instant. Everything can just fall extremely fast, and then America could go from being the most powerful country in the world to a complete nothing in one day. So I just think that people need to stay on their people. Do not get too comfortable. Do not think that America has a lot of cushion, because I don't think any country really does. And the system we have right now, something could set off something and it could collapse in a second. Like seriously, just see what's going on in Argentina. See how fast things escalated over an election. And this kind of adds on to all these other risks. If these things do escalate, who knows what will happen? Who knows what will happen in Hong Kong? If it becomes a war zone, Hong Kong could collapse in a second. Nobody is safe. Something like what's going on in Argentina could happen anywhere. And I think that a lot of people in America have been tricked into thinking that that something like that would be impossible to happen here. Because let's remember, in 2000, we had a stock market crash. 2008, we had a real estate crash, and the entire financial system nearly crashed. This next crisis will be a crisis of the currency. So yeah, everything else will crash. But in the past, we at least still had our currency. Now our money our store of value will be gone. And that will be the last straw. That will be it. That will be the end. So anyway, that's just my show for today. Hopefully you have opened your eyes to something. If not, then I just wasted your time. So I'm sorry. Anyway, well, I'm not apologizing for having you watch this video. It was a great decision. You may not realize it now, but you'll realize it later, because you've just witnessed. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about. All right, I'll see y'all next week.